Hello everyone. The purpose of today's lesson is to talk a little bit about character manipulation in Java. And so up till this point, there's a few things that you've learned about data types and classes. So for example, there is a class called string, and that is a data type that can represent multiple characters together. And because it's a class, which is a complex data type, there's a number of methods or things that you can do to manipulate that string. Turning to uppercase, turning to lowercase, grabbing a substring, grabbing individual characters, and things like that. There's also a data type, character, which can represent a single character. And you'll notice right away that one of the differences here is that first of all, this uses double quotes to represent a string and single quotes to represent a character. That's particular to these data types. The other thing you'll notice is that this is lowercase. This is a primitive data type in Java. And this over here being uppercase represents a class. And so as I mentioned, there are many things that can be done to a complex data type, to a class. And one of those is character add. So for example, if we come back to this, we could replace that C with character at position 0. Remember that this starts at 0 and it will proceed 1, 2, 3, 4. It has a length of 5, but it goes from 0 to 4. So the question is, what sorts of things can we do with a character data type? And it turns out there's quite a bit we can do. Remember that a character is not, the computer doesn't have any concept really of what a character is. It's represented just in terms of binary, in terms of a number. And because it's represented in the computer just as a number, I can manipulate it as a number with a few little kind of caveats. So for example, it is perfectly acceptable to add 2 to a character. It's just a number, so I can easily add 2 to it, which is going to take that letter H, which is represented as a number, remember in binary, and I can add 2 to that. And remember I said there was a caveat. The only caveat is that, remember, Java is a very typed language, and a character is represented with a small number of bits. But an integer is represented by a larger number of bits. And so you can see the error here says incompatible types. And that's essentially just a way of Java saying, look, you're taking something that's really big and you're asking me to store it into something that's really meant to be small. Are you sure that's what you want to do? And so one of the things you can do is you can do what's called casting, which is basically telling Java, look, I know what I'm doing. I want you to try to force that into the type of data that I want it to be. And the way that we would do that is by surrounding it with this command character, char. And what that's saying is to take this, the results of this addition, and try to force it back down into a character. Now that's a pretty powerful tool, and it can be used with other things as well. So for example, if I have a double variable and I want to turn it into an integer, again, double, very big, it possibly has decimals. Integer, very small, no decimals. You can sort of tell Java, try to fit that data into that other data type. Now, it'll do it. It can't do it for everything, but it'll do it in these cases. But if there's any extra data that doesn't fit in, Java's not going to round. It's not going to be smart. It's just going to get rid of it. So 12.2 or 12.999 is just going to get turned into 12. And so if we were to go and print this, and then why not just add in that character so you can see. If we were to actually try to run this program, what we would see is that 12.9999 got reduced to 12, and that H got upgraded, added by 2, and it now became a capital J. I strongly encourage you to take a moment and to look up, Google ASCII tables so that you can actually see what numbers are used to represent this. And this is something you learned in the previous course, but the capital A is a different number than lowercase a. But they are contiguous in that capital B comes after capital A and capital C comes after capital B. And so all of that is represented using numbers. Now that in itself is kind of cool. It's not the only way that you can manipulate characters. So at this point in the course, you're also familiar with the wonderful for loop. So here's a for loop that is going to loop 26 times. 26 letters in the alphabet. Maybe you can see where this is going. So imagine that I wanted to create a loop that would go through every single letter of the alphabet. So I could create a variable here, start it off at A, and inside here, this isn't going to quite do what we want, but it will pass the point along. And what I could do in here is I could say x equals 1, something like this. And as long as I turn this back into a character, like that, then what we have now is a loop that is going to start at 0, keep going as long as it's less than 26, and increase by 1 every single time. Now, my apologies, the reason we're getting errors is because I accidentally put this in the wrong spot. So what we have here is that double x equals the character at x, and if we want, we could print this out, and what you would see is that you would see it increasing by 1 every single time. And let's just do that right now. And we're going to throw XX in here. And let's get rid of our other print line to make it not so confusing. And let's just compress our output a little bit. So there's new. And you'll see that in here it didn't do anything. And you're thinking to yourself, well, why did it just do that? That's not really what we wanted. Any ideas? This is specifically for people who are coming from Python. Always use your curly brackets in Java, right? So remember what we talked about was that this for loop is only going to execute this one line over and over and over again, and then this is just going to end up getting run once. So look at the difference in output now. So here we've got much better B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way over to Z. Now you'll notice it doesn't print A, and there's a reason for that. And you'll notice also that it stops at Z, which is good. But the key to why it's not actually printing A happens with kind of the order of what's happening inside this for loop. And that's going to be something I'm going to leave you to figure out should you choose to use this. But there is even another way of doing this. And so here's another way that you could loop through all the letters of the alphabet, because a for loop is not restricted to just numbers. You can count by other things as well. So for example, I could have a for loop. I need something else. And I could have this character start at A, and I could keep going as long as it's less than or equal to Z. And I could increase by 1. Here's another great for loop. I'm going to be lazy again, and this time hopefully it will work a little better. We're not going to bother with the brackets. We're just going to toss this in here and ask it to print. So let's comment out this to simplify what we're going to see. And you know what? Let's just get rid of this too, so you can let's just leave it as a space and run it. And there you can see it's gone through every letter of the alphabet. And I can do anything that I want inside the for loop as long as I have brackets around it. So why would you want to do this stuff? Well, manipulating characters happens a lot. So you're going to get an assignment later on that has to do with Caesar ciphers, encrypting data, being able to shift input to turn it into output. You're also looking at an assignment where you have a string and you have to count the number of letters. So how many A's are in that string? How many B's are in that string? How many C's are in that string? And while there's a number of ways to accomplish this, using a simple for loop like that, or using some technique where you're basically going letter by letter, might be a nice simple way to accomplish that. Start at A and count up all of the A's inside that string. Then go into B and count up all the B's inside that string, and so on and so forth. Remember that capital A is different than lowercase a. So if you're going to use this to shift a letter, or if you're going to use this to count up the number of letters, you're going to have to make sure that you're converting all to uppercase, or that you're treating your A and capital A separate in your counts. So that's a little bit of information about character manipulation. The only other thing I want to remind you is that you really need to familiarize yourself with some of the different things that you can do with strings. Remember that dot that is used to access all the different methods that are available for a particular class. And some of these things, such as substring, or to lowercase or to uppercase, are ones that you're going to want to use at some point. And so it's good to sort of get familiar and practice with it while you can. Hopefully that helped a little bit, and I'll see you next time with another Java tutorial.